Hi, everybody, and good afternoon. I'm News 13's Amy Hoyt. We're coming to you live for 13 Now in our newsroom in downtown Panama City. It's good to have you with us today. As you know, every month we talk about breast cancer awareness. It is Buddy Check Day, and we always want to remind women to check for lumps in their breast, and if they turn 40 or they find a lump, to see your doctor and get that mammogram. One thing we don't talk about all the time is men who get breast cancer, because they are only 1% of the population. It is mostly women, but it does happen, and it can be very unusual and maybe a little more unnerving even for a gentleman to find that he has breast cancer. Today, we have a couple, a gentleman named Jim Teeple, who is our guest and our breast cancer survivor, and his wife, Gloria Teeple, who is going to talk a little bit about being the caregiver. We know what a priceless role that is, but it's a little bit different, I would imagine, when you're the spouse of a man who is a breast cancer survivor. So welcome to both of you. It's good to have you here.
Hey, Amy,
Drove over from Walton County. I appreciate it so much on a rainy Friday afternoon, no less. All right, Jim, we're going to begin with you. You said you were diagnosed about 10 years ago.
Yes, ma'am. First of all, Amy, thank you for having both Gloria and I on. It's a real honor to meet you and to talk about this subject. Yeah, it was about 10 years ago that I had retired from the military. I was in the working for Boeing, and I was coming back from a trip. And so very briefly, coming back from a trip from Boeing, I had a horrible headache. So I just wanted, did you want me to start with that?
Yeah, you're good. Keep going.
All right. So I had a horrible headache, so I stopped at a CVS and checked the blood pressure and said, no, that was crazy. It was very high. So I went into a couple other Walgreens and CVS's, and it was still high. So I think it was the next day or two that I was carrying some wood into the house, and it bumped me, and I bumped into the wall, as I guess it was. And I said, ouch, that kind of hurts. So I started checking, and there was a lump underneath my right chest. So I had my wife, Gloria, she came over and checked it, and went, yeah, there's a lump there. And so it was shortly after that that the routine began with the different medical checks and things. So
when you felt that lump, did you think breast cancer at all?
No, not at all. It was very odd, but again, my body was telling me something was going on because of the blood pressure issue that I was going through.
All right, so at this point, what do? You tell Gloria and do what?
Well, Gloria, she thought it was a cyst, and not overly concerned, and I wasn't overly concerned as well. But so I thought, well, let me go check the family doctor, and yeah, so I had an appointment fairly shortly after that to see them, and she, at that time, did a check, and she says, let's send you down for a mammogram, I guess is what they call it. Right. So she also scheduled a bunch of other tests, blood tests, things like that, and so Gloria and I, it was within a week, I think, of that particular schedule, we went down and had the mammogram done, which was another story. But
yeah, let's talk about that before we move on. Listen, it's no fun for a woman, but there's something to literally grab and put between those two glass plates.
Yeah, that was.
How do they do that? I mean, it's the same machine?
It's the same machine, but as we walked into the mammography center down at Gulf Breeze, it was nicely lit. Well appointed, and a little plastic window, and I knocked on the window and said, hi, my name is Jim Teeple, and I'm here for my mammogram. And it went steadily downhill from there. But the machine itself is not designed for men, and the lady said, well, we have a special device for taking care of things that don't have much flesh tissue, I guess. So after
was that painful?
Yeah, I got very friendly with that machine.
Yeah, I just bet.
But the X-rays went downstairs, and the radiologist said I need some more pictures, and so we did that. And then she said, I think I need to talk to you. So Gloria and I went downstairs, and she says, while you're here, I need to do an ultrasound. Okay. So I was there for the ultrasound, and the radiologist came in, and with her was a staff of 5 or 6 other individuals, all carrying clipboards, and I said, "This is interesting.
This can't be good, right?
Am I the resident? Let's check this out kind of guy." And she says, "Well, you're the first male we've had in here in 17 years."
Wow.
Checking out what we think we're going to do here. So I said, whatever you need to do, just do it. So she did the ultrasound. She said, I need to schedule you for a biopsy, needle biopsy. So 2 days later, I went back in for a needle biopsy. And that was just before Thanksgiving. So October 11th is when all this started. Within a month, I'm in for a needle biopsy and then waiting for the results of that.
And when did they tell you it's breast cancer?
The needle biopsy came back, I think it was around December 8th, somewhere in there.
So they're injecting the lump and extracting fluid from it?
Yes, they did. They took two snips of tissue, and it was about a week later, somewhere in there, that we got a call that said, we need to have you come back in for to talk with the doctor. So at that point, we went back to the Gulf Breeze Hospital and into the little room there, and the doctor sat down with us, and he discussed with me the various things that they had found. He said one of them was cancer. They don't know quite yet what type of cancer, but it was cancerous. And then that led to the next decision point, which was find an oncologist, find a surgeon, and determine what to do.
Now, when they actually give you that diagnosis, like up until that point, there's always that little bit of hope they made a mistake or it's something else. I mean, I know you were a grown-up when this happened, right? 62. Yep. And, you know, you got the military behind you and you're a very disciplined type of individual. But it had to knock you off your feet to hear that. It
did. I was obviously very concerned about it because I didn't know where it was going to lead to, and I was concerned about, you know, Gloria and what it was going to mean to her and the rest of the family. But I think until you really get into the heart of what type of cancer it is and what stage it is and what they decide they're going to do about it, that you're still of the mindset that, well, we'll just get through this, we'll press on and get her done.
What about family history? Do they check that for a man like they do a woman to see if there's any breast cancer in the family?
They asked if I had a family history of breast cancer, and there was none, to the best of my knowledge.
Any other type of cancers?
Well, my grandmother died of I think it was bone cancer, but that's the only family
They don't
member
consider them a link, I guess.
No, there was no linkage.
All right, so you make a decision to do what now at this point?
Well, at this point, we had to find an oncologist, so we had a very good recommendation for an oncologist and a surgeon in Pensacola.
You were living in Santa Rosa County at the time, which is like the Gulf Breeze, Navarre area, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We were living in Navarre Beach, Navarre area there. So over to Pensacola, and we met the surgeon, and we told him that there was an oncologist that had been recommended, but it was very difficult to get in to see because of his workload and caseload. But he said, that's okay, he's a friend of mine, and he said, because of the type of cancer that we think you have, then he'll see you, which was good. But so from the doctor's standpoint, he says, I'm uncomfortable with the needle biopsy that was done because I didn't get an exact result of that because it was a small tissue sample. So he says, I want to do a lumpectomy. So the second week in December, I went in for a lumpectomy, and it was just the week prior to Christmas, we got a call from the doctor, and he said, well, good news and bad news. The good news is we know what it is, and the bad news is we'll see you December 23rd for a mastectomy.
Wow. On the one side?
On the one side, the right side,
right
correct.
Side. And at that point, are you just like, okay, let's just do it, or?
Oh, I was, yeah, absolutely. I was, over to see the oncologist once that decision was made, and the oncologist, he had a laundry list of things that he was going to do. He was very, very profound, very straightforward. He says, I'm now your family physician, your personal physician. I want to know if you got a sneeze, a cough, or a wheeze, or anything like that. And he says, but this is what we're going to do. He says, we're going to start with chemo and radiation, and then the tamoxifen, the medication that was a prescription. And that's the plan if the results of the surgery don't come out as they should. So,
all right. So you didn't get any kind of chemo or anything leading up to the surgery?
No, none. No. It was needle biopsy, lumpectomy, and then straight in for surgery.
All right. Before we move on, I do want to ask Gloria a question before we talk about caregiving. At this point, what are you thinking when your husband's diagnosed with breast cancer? How unusual?
I was in denial. I told him, Jim, you're worrying for nothing. It's a cyst, and I'm sure if you go to the doctor, that's what they're going to tell you. You're going to be okay, because I just could not imagine that with his military background and the dangers he had been in, that he would have breast cancer. Anyway, he's a guy. Guys don't get breast cancer.
No.
And that was my train of thought at the time.
But when the final diagnosis comes in and they double check it and they say this is what it is, what do you think?
Well, the day they told us about that he had breast cancer, we were in the Gulf Breeze Hospital. They took us into this small room, no windows, very dark, 3 chairs, a small little lamp. And I was working at the time, so my mind is going towards, okay, I need to do this, take care of this. I'm on my phone, and Jim looks over at me and says, you know, this is the blue funk room. And I said, what is a blue funk room? He said, this is where you get bad news. And I'm still in denial, saying, no, it's a cyst, sweetheart. It's okay. They're going to tell us what to do, and it's going to be okay. Well, the doctor comes in, he's explaining all of this, and all of a sudden my mind comes right back to me, and I hear the word cancer. And I look at the doctor, and I said, did you just say he has cancer? And he looks at me and the nurse like, where has she been this whole time? Mm-hmm. And so we walk out of the room. The nurse follows us, because I'm sure she saw my reaction. At that point, I fell apart and realized this is not a cyst. This is male breast cancer.
Yeah, and I can understand that. That's got to be a very emotional time. At this point, you've been married a long time.
Long time.
Yeah, and you have children, correct?
Yes.
Grown children,
yes.
even 10 years ago.
We have grown, yes, all grown out of the house when this happened.
Who told the kids?
I think we just did that as a joint
we
thing.
Did it together?
Yeah, and we tried to keep everything as normal as possible, because we have adult children, they have their children, they have their careers, so we just wanted to keep it as normal as possible.
All right, so let's go back to December 23rd. So you go and you have surgery and you have a mastectomy.
Yes.
Is it similar for a man than it is for a woman?
Assuming that it is, it was fairly straightforward. I went in to the surgery center early in the morning, and I think 9:30 is when I walked back into the operating room, and and I was back in the recovery room at probably around 11:30, I guess, and they wanted to keep me overnight, and I said, no, I don't think I need to do that. I'll just go on home with the family. And so I walked out of the hospital, and we were home by 2 o'clock that afternoon.
Wow, is that your military training? Get me out?
You know, I don't know if it was or not. I think it was just one of those situations where I just wanted to go home. It was Christmas. People were talking about, delaying Christmas until, the 26th, 27th. I said, no. I just want to get home and be with the family, so let's do Christmas, I'll sit in the chair, I'll do what I need to do, but it's, yeah.
Did you have drainage tubes or any of that?
I did. I had one drainage tube, and that probably was the most uncomfortable thing of all. But thank goodness my caregiver over here, she was very good about draining that and keeping track of all the fluid levels and making sure that it was well taken care of.
Now, it's like you're instantly a nurse, which is not your career field, correct? You're not in the medical field.
No, I am not.
So how did you learn how to do that?
Well, they taught us in the hospital, and going back to me being in denial, at that point, well, it was really before Christmas, at that point that I spoke to our daughter, and she gave me the best advice of any advice I had received. I realized I had to stop the flight and begin the fight with him and support him and do whatever we needed to do to get him through this.
All right, so how long is it that you're having to do the drains before you start to heal?
I think it was probably a week and a half, somewhere in there, maybe 2 weeks.
And how long before you're up and out, and or you were moving around, you were okay?
It took a couple days before I could get up and move around. I had to sleep in a reclining chair for 10 days because of the drainage tube. Mm-hmm. But once that was removed, I was kind of up and around and ready to start moving again.
Now, do you know at this point that you're not going to need chemo? Or how did they decide that?
I guess I really didn't know at that point. It wasn't until we went in to see the oncologist again where he says, we got it all. They had explored I think it was 4 lymph nodes, and it had not metastasized to the lymph nodes. So he says, I think we're going to spare the radiation and chemotherapy right now, and we'll just start with the prescription medication. And that was it. He said, but from a cancer standpoint, he said, it went from us understanding it was adenoid cystic carcinoma or secretory carcinoma, which was kind of, I don't know what those were, but then he said at that first meeting with him after the surgery, he says it was invasive intracystic papillary carcinoma stage 2, and you are the 64th known male in the United States that had that at that time.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. I don't know if that's good or bad. That kind of makes you put you in a special category.
Yeah, I don't know if that was true or not, but it sounded pretty good.
So have you had to have more mammograms since then? I know it's been 10 years, and it takes 10 years, you told me. For women, it's 5 years before they're clear,
Right.
and 10 years for men.
That's correct. It's 10 years for men. I was surprised when he told me it's 10-year treatment for men. But
so
no.
You go once a year, or you had been going once a year?
For 10 years I've been going every 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then we see the skin doctors every 6 months as well.
Did you have any reconstructive?
No, in fact,
surgery?
the doctor asked me if I wanted reconstructive surgery, and I just being a guy, I said no, I don't think so. You know, I don't need reconstructive surgery.
Obviously, just meeting you today, I can tell you both have a sense of humor, but especially you, Jim. Did that help get you through this?
Well, yeah, it did. We had, we tried to make humor out of mostly all of this, but and we knew how devastating it was, and I knew how bad it was for Gloria until it hit her that we need to move on with this. But me, I just tried to keep it humorous, and it's hard to do that because you know how devastating it is for a woman.
Right.
It's horribly devastating, and for guys it's so rare, and that's why it's so much more critical for guys at times, because men don't check themselves.
Right. You think they should?
Men should check
Even though it's
themselves,
rare.
or at least be aware of their bodies enough to know that if you feel something and it feels odd, or there's something that's creating something that feels odd, then one should get that checked out and go where it leads you,
Right.
and be aggressive with it.
Absolutely. Now, we did mention that you are a military veteran. I'm going to backpedal a little bit. Tell me about your service.
Well, I started out with a pilot's license in high school, and then I decided to go in the Army because helicopter pilots were...
Go Army.
were being sought in the Army, and you didn't have to have a college degree. So it was
Right.
in 1968 I went to flight school, and Vietnam in 1969 as a helicopter gunship pilot. And off to Panama as a pilot, and then I was on a levy to go back to Vietnam for a second tour, and I was ready to go do that. And I decided, now let's go finish college. So went back to the University of Iowa and got re-enrolled, and flew Chinooks in the National Guard for a couple of years, and then got my commission and into the Air Force to fly the H-53 helicopter.
Wow. So you were a warrant officer in the Army.
Correct. I
And
was a
then-
warrant officer, and then came out of that as a W-2, and then,
Right.
of course, into the Air Force, retired in the Air Force in '99.
Well, thank you for your service, first of all.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, the national stories about the burn pits and veterans having breast cancer, do you think there's any connection for you there? Were you around anything like that?
I was around burn pits in the Vietnam
You
theater
were.
all the time, and I don't know if they were destroying the amount of stuff or the types of carcinogenics that they're destroying in the theaters nowadays. But yeah, we were around burn pits, and I know it's a big deal, and Congress is looking at it, and the VA is looking at it. But whether that was, a part and parcel of what I had, I don't know.
Were you using a VA for all of this medical for
No.
your breast cancer? No,
No,
just regular
no,
medical.
regular medicine.
Have you looked into that at all through a VA? Do the veterans now, just looking back, to see if there's a connection? Since they signed that bill into law.
Well, I think it's not one of those, at least currently, it's not one of those things that is recognized, breast cancer. And my oncologist, he wanted to find out if it had started in the prostate, but at that time it had not begun in the prostate. So.
All right, I was just curious because it had just recently come
Right.
up. And then you retired from Eglin?
Herbert.
Herbert?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Similar but different. Yeah, they're so close together. Well, we appreciate your service.
I appreciate
All right, let's talk about caregiving, Gloria. Okay, we've gotten through the hard part now, and now you know you're in charge.
Yes.
You've got to take care of him, even though
Yes.
he's a strong guy, but still. So where does that put you? Like, how hard was that?
Well, some days very difficult with him because he wanted to go, and I said no. And as far as caretaker, my sister and brother-in-law, they came down and spent Christmas with us, and my brother-in-law is since deceased. He had cancer and passed away. My sister's had a double mastectomy.
Was that
So-
before or after Jim?
This is after Jim.
Okay,
So
so
so Jim had his cancer, then my brother-in-law, and then my sister.
Wow.
So yeah, she had got cancer in 2020. But
Sorry.
the caretaking, I had so many people surrounding me, the neighbors, friends, family. Caretaking with him, besides doing the drains, I made sure he was fed, tried to keep him down from doing activities that he wanted to do, and just recover and recuperate and emotionally
Right.
come to grips with it.
Now, since it was a role reversal, the spouse being
Yes.
the woman, what kind of support groups are out there for men or for the wife?
Well, we lived in Santa Rosa County in Navarre, and I'm sure had we been in Pensacola, it would have been a little bit easier for us. But because it was quite a drive, the support group was mainly just what we found online and just experiences of the female friends. I had friends on base because I was at base working out quite a bit, and I would speak to them and how they cared for their husbands cared for them and what got them through that. That helped me a lot as far as knowing how to help Jim cope.
And I can hear, obviously, he was concerned for you, as a husband loves his wife. So
He was.
Was he a good patient?
No.
No.
To this day, no.
I didn't think so.
No.
That's kind of a good thing. I think maybe that drive to get it over with and just power through, maybe that's
Yeah.
helpful in some way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think on the part and parcel to that during the recovery period, though, I was very sensitive to things like lymph node infections, or when they take a large piece of you away, then you've got leftover nerves that are trying to find ground zero, and it creates a little bit of consternation in how you're feeling. So over that intervening, I want to say the next 8 years, I had one more PET MRI and 2 PET CT scans just to make sure I was clear.
Is this where you drink the dye?
Yeah.
And they look.
Yeah, and you wait for an hour very still, and then they take you back in. So yeah.
Well, you look very healthy now, so it's a safe assumption you feel good?
Yeah, I feel great. It was nice. December 23rd this past year was the 10-year point, so I've got one more appointment with the oncologist here in the next month, I guess, and then hopefully he'll say, yep, see you when we see you.
Thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
Now, talking about support groups, they're mostly for women. Do you ever, other than today, do you ever share your story?
Yes, I have done that one other time. The breast cancer group that's out of, I think, the Freeport area, they have a get-together every summer, and so I happened to meet Leah at the post office up there, and we got to talking about it. She said, "Would you not mind speaking at the next event that we have?" So I did. I went to that, and it was at the Freeport High School, and I spoke at that. And
What kind of reaction do you get?
well, it was just, when you look at the crowd and you ask how many people out there had breast cancer or knew somebody that had breast cancer, a lot of people raise their hand. Anybody out there that's a male that has or had breast cancer? Nobody raises their hands. So I said, okay, I'm going to address this as from a male perspective. And so the reaction I get was one of more curiosity than anything. I think the treatments are relatively the same. The caregiving is relatively the same. It's like you mentioned earlier, the role reversal. But from an interest standpoint, it's like, well, what did you go through that we didn't go through as women? Not a whole lot.
Similar.
Yeah, it was very fast for me, but because I noticed in listening to many of your previous casts that, you know, they start with radiation or they start with
Right.
chemo, or, you know, the ladies lose their hair and all this.
So you didn't have that?
No, I didn't have
because
any of
there
that.
was no chemo.
Yeah, it went straight from surgery to meeting to tamoxifen, and we'll see you in 6 months.
Wow. Well, God bless you. And we appreciate you sharing your story today, of course. Best advice for men?
For men, I think I have basically two pieces of advice. One is don't delay seeking any treatment whatsoever if you find that your body is telling you something is not right. Just check it out, get it done, and go see where it goes from there. Second piece of advice is for male caregivers of your spouses. Treat them with kid gloves because they deserve the kid gloves, and they're in a difficult place, and you need to be part and parcel of them, with them, and for them.
Gloria, advice for caregivers?
Well, don't be in denial. If you feel there's something wrong of your spouse, then make sure you support them and say, get to the doctor. I was in complete denial. And I can say for the men out there, I think women are more proactive with this, but men are not. And if you would just reach out to your male counterparts in your life and tell them it doesn't have to be a lump. Like Jim, he had headaches, he had high blood pressure, and just knew something was off with his body. So be proactive in making sure that the males in your family, in your life, are doing what they need to do to address the issues that they may have.
And getting support for yourself. Did you take time for yourself at all? Or did you just wait until this was over?
Well, we've been waiting 10 years for this to be over, and still I think you always have it in the back of you're thankful at that 10-year mark, but you always have it in the back of your mind, is it going to come back? So that's why it's so important to be vigilant. Our daughter, she gave me the best advice early on. I cried every day, and was just so upset, and I said, everyone keeps telling me to take it one day at a time, and I don't know how to do that. And she said, you don't have to. You take it 1 hour at a time or 30 minutes at a time if you have to. And just go forth and take care of yourself, because that way you're going to be able to take care of Dad. That was the best advice I ever received through the whole journey.
Well, it looked like it worked, and you've done a fabulous job.
Thank you.
And we sure
Thank
appreciate
you.
both of you sharing your story today and coming out and letting us know what to expect and what to look for, and to remind women now, of course, we check for the lumps, but for your loved one who's a man in your life, if something changes, no matter what it is, to get that detected and checked with a doctor as well. Again, thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
I always swear I'm not going to cry, and it always happens.
I know.
You were both great.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Amy.
All right, check for the lumps so I don't have to cry anymore. We're all in this together, breast cancer awareness. Tomorrow's actually the 13th, which is our Buddy Check Day here at News 13. You don't have to wait till tomorrow, though. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.